All right, we're about to become archaeological detectives and take a journey way back in time. Our mission? To investigate a seriously advanced city that was thriving for centuries. And then it just completely vanished. All it left behind were riddles, basically, written in brick and stone.
I mean, just look at this. For almost 4,000 years, this place was totally silent, a ghost town. These ruins, they're in modern-day Pakistan, and they belong to Mohenjodaro. That name, it chillingly translates to the Hill of the Dead. This was one of the greatest cities of its time, and then it was just gone. So the big mystery is, what happened here?
And that's the real challenge for us. With no surviving books, no letters, no eyewitnesses, how do you even begin to piece that story together? Well, you have to rely on the only clues left behind, the artifacts. Every single object is like a silent witness, and it's our job to get it to talk. So every good investigation starts with the basics, right? The where and the when. Let's get our bearings and place this incredible civilization on the map and on the timeline. Okay, so Mohenjo-Daro was a huge hub for the Indus Valley civilization. You can see it was perfectly located right on the banks of the Indus River in what is now Pakistan. And this aerial shot, wow, it really gives you a sense of the sheer scale. This was no small settlement. It was a sprawling, super organized metropolis. This timeline really puts it all into perspective. The civilization was flourishing for 800 years. That's a long time, starting way back in 2700 BCE. Then, around 1900 BCE, poof, it just disappears, and it stays lost, completely forgotten by history, until archaeologists literally stumble upon the ruins in 1922. Just imagine that, a whole civilization just buried for nearly 4,000 years.
And we're not talking about a tiny village here. At its peak, archaeologists figure that around 50,000 people called Mohenjo-Daro home. Now, for the ancient world, that is a massive city. It tells us that this society had to be complex, successful, and incredibly well organized to support that many people.
So our first big piece of evidence is the city itself. And its design, it's just mind-boggling for its time. This is where we really start to see just how advanced these people were.
Okay, forget everything you think you know about ancient cities. Mohenjo-Daro had a revolutionary citywide plumbing system. I'm talking clay pipes connecting buildings, channels to carry wastewater away, and deep wells just like this one. It looks like pretty much every resident had access to a bathroom inside their own home. Now, this wasn't just for convenience. It shows an unbelievable focus on public health and city planning.
And to really wrap your head around how far ahead of their time they were, get this. It would be 2,000 years before the ancient Romans built a sewer system that was this complex. 2 millennia. That is just an incredible leap in engineering.
And now, let's look at the absolute crown jewel of their water system, the Great Bath. This thing wasn't just some puddle. It was a massive pool, 39 feet long, 8 feet deep, made of perfectly waterproofed brick. It had its own well for fresh water, a really clever drain, and even little dressing rooms all around it. This was a major public project.
But what was it for? Well, archaeologists have two main theories. On one hand, it could have been a public pool, right? A place for people to come bathe and cool off from the crazy heat. But there's another really compelling idea, that it was used for religious rituals. Ritual bathing is a huge part of Hinduism, a faith with deep roots in this very region, which suggests this bath might have had a very sacred purpose. Okay, so we've seen their homes, we've seen their public spaces. Now let's head down to the marketplace. The artifacts they found here tell a really fascinating story about a complex economy built on trade and a whole lot of mystery.
Here we've got 2 clues that show us both order and mystery. These really precise stone weights, which were found all over the city, they prove there was a standardized system for fair trade. But then you have these beautifully carved stone seals, and they're a total puzzle, covered in a script that we still haven't been able to decipher. And that's the thing. There are over 400 unique symbols or pictographs found on these seals, but what they mean is totally lost to time. Were they, pressed into wax to mark goods, kind of like a company logo? Or maybe people wore them as personal charms, something to ward off evil. It's honestly one of the biggest unanswered questions of the Indus Valley.
This little clay model might just look like a kid's toy, but it's another super important economic clue. This is how goods got to the city. Farmers would load up their carts with crops like wheat and cotton, hitch them up to bulls, and haul them into Mohenjo-Daro's markets to sell or trade.
So we've got a good idea of how their city worked and how they traded, but what about the people themselves? Let's get a little more personal now and check out the clues that tell us how they looked, what they wore, and maybe even what they did for fun. This famous little statue, nicknamed the Priest King, gives us a peek at the men with their neat beards and cool patterned robes. And we can also see they had a love for decoration in these really intricate beads, which tells us that both men and women probably wore jewelry like necklaces, bracelets, and rings. And this is where they lived. Most people had these two-story houses made of mud brick with flat roofs that would have been perfect for escaping the summer heat. The design was actually pretty smart. The houses faced inward toward courtyards for privacy, and they only had windows on the second floor, high above the dust of these narrow alleys. And life definitely wasn't all work and no play. The people of Mohenjo-Daro had downtime. Archaeologists have found dice, grooved tracks for some kind of ball game, and game boards like this one. In fact, some historians think an early form of chess might have been played right here, which would make this one of the oldest board games in the entire world. So we've managed to piece together this pretty amazing picture of daily life. But that brings us to our final and maybe the most profound part of our investigation, the ultimate mystery of why this incredible civilization just suddenly came to an end. So, what happened? Well, for years, the leading theory was a violent invasion. But scholars have pretty much debunked that now. There's just not a lot of evidence. The more likely culprit seems to be nature. Geological evidence points to a series of catastrophic earthquakes and floods that just slammed the region, messing up the river, ruining crops, and basically forcing the people to just abandon their great cities. And this is where our investigation has to end. Not really with an answer, but with a huge question. The thousands of artifacts we've looked at tell us so much about how the people of Mohenjo-Daro lived their sophisticated lives. But the reason they left it all behind? Well, that secret remains buried, one that this incredible lost world has yet to give up.